If you ever find yourself in unresourceful states from time to time, which I'm sure that you do because you're a human being if you're watching this, then you're really going to enjoy today's video because I'm going to share with you a list of ways that you can break yourself out of unresourceful states. So if you're interested in breaking yourself out of negative states more quickly, more easily, and to have more conscious control over how you do that, then you're in the right place and enjoy today's video. In the field of NLP, neuro-linguistic program, we talk a lot about state elicitation, about getting yourself and other people into resourceful states, but we don't talk a lot about breaking states and how to get yourself out of the negative states when you find yourself in them. And there's a couple of ways to go about doing that, and the real question here is going to be, number one, how easily can you break yourself out of unresourceful states? Number two is, how many ways do you have to go about doing that? This could be referred to as a break state or a pattern interrupt. How many of those do you have available at your disposal when you need them the most? And then really, how quickly can you get yourself out? Sometimes it'll be quick, sometimes it'll take a little bit longer, but I'm going to share with you some of the strategies that I use with myself and that I invite you to test out. And then of course, at the end of the video, I'm open to your suggestions, your inputs, to let me know if you have any other ways that I didn't mention here, because of course, this list is not going to be the full, most extensive list possible. So I'm curious to hear, how do you break yourself out of unresourceful states? If you've done any study into the field of neuro-linguistic programming, you know that states have two components, the mental component and then the physiological component. So we have the mind-body states. And that gives us two, as we refer to in neurosemantics, royal roads to changing your states. We can change your mind and you change your state, or you change your physiology and that will also change your state. So I'm going to start with the physiological methods, and then I'll get into the psychological methods. So one great physiological method to change your state is to actually just move your body a little bit. So of course, change your posture. We know that when people are, let's say, sad, for example, they tend to tilt their head down and look down, and the corners of the mouth tend to go down. So looking up and smiling will tend to slightly break us out of a negative state. That probably won't work very well with an intense negative state, but it will definitely start to loosen up the state. I always find for myself personally that doing some kind of exercise, I know some of my students have shared this as well. So taking a walk, a brisk walk, I always say that if you walk for 20 minutes, a brisk walk, it's almost impossible to stay depressed because the hormones and the chemicals in your body automatically come out to change your state. Do some jumping jacks, take a jog, do some pull-ups, any sort of physical activity that's a little bit more brisk than just a gentle movement over a period of 15-20 minutes will almost inevitably break you out of negative states. Put on some different music. That's another way to change the environmental level. Put on some different music, change up your environment. So these are some ways to change your state. A little caveat here is, of course, if you're not sleeping well, or you haven't been eating right or exercising properly, all of those kind of basic physiological needs, eating, sleeping, exercising, are going to feed into your capability of being able to get yourself into resourceful states, and of course to breaking yourself out of the unresourceful ones. So keep in mind that that's important to take care of yourself, and that will help you to have more control over yourself, your physiology, and your states. So there's a couple of ways to change your physiology: change your posture, change your environment, do some exercise or some movement. Let's get into some of the ways that you can break yourself out of unresourceful states psychologically. So one of the ones that I would use, one more interesting thing I'll say here is that it's a lot easier for us to break someone else out of a state than it is for us to break ourselves out of a state, which is kind of interesting because when we're working with somebody else or somebody else is working with us, it becomes a lot easier to shock, to jar, and to surprise and to confuse somebody. Whereas it's not as easy to shock, jar, surprise, and confuse ourselves because we are the surpriser and the surprisee. It doesn't really work so well. It's kind of like when you're in a negative state and then the phone rings and you kind of get confused or jarred, or your pattern gets interrupted, it changes your state and you kind of forget how you were feeling before or what you were thinking about before. It's easier for external stuff to do that to us. However, you could have a couple of psychological ways to confuse or jar yourself lined up. For example, when you're feeling in a negative state, I challenge you to experiment with counting down from the number 1,000 down to 0 by intervals of 12. I just pulled the number 12 out of the air, and you can change up the number. But 1,000, 900, and right. So as soon as you start to get a little bit confused, your psychology shifts gears. Now it becomes a lot harder to maintain unresourceful state in that way. One of the great ones, classic NLP move, is to change the tone of the voice in your head, the actual voice itself. So if there's some self-talk, you could change it to the voice of Scooby-Doo or Mickey Mouse or any kind of extravagant character, cartoon, John Wayne, or make it a sexy voice like, "Ooh, you're so stupid, Jason," right? So you change the voice that way. Another great classic move to break yourself out of states and to interrupt them when you're in negative ones is to step out of the mental movie. So if you are remembering a memory and that's what's getting you into the unresourceful state, like you're reliving an old past hurt or you're stepped into some imagination of how bad things are going to be in the future, then to step out of it so you can see yourself in that movie and give yourself some distance from that. So you see yourself from the outside and give yourself some distance is another great way to break yourself out of unresourceful states. So I think I've been rambling on for long enough in this video here, but I am curious for you, do you have any other ways that I haven't listed here? I've got an article associated with this video, which will have this all written out for you step by step, so that'll make it a little bit easier for you to consume this content. But share with me your ways of how do you break yourself out of negative emotional states when you get in them. Just leave that in a comment wherever you can around this video. I'm really curious to hear, and your contributions will probably be greatly appreciated by other people who are looking for ways that work best for them, because not everything will work best for everybody and not everything will work best for every state, which is, if I go back to what I said towards the beginning of the video, why it's important to have multiple ways to break yourself out of state. So you've got some plan B, plan C, some contingency plans, and some backup methods. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jason Schneider. I'm the founder of the Perception Academy, and I work with coaches, leaders, and personal developers to unleash the highest and best of human potential using cutting-edge psychological models such as neuro-linguistic programming and neurosemantics. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you know anybody else who would benefit from learning how to break themselves out of unresourceful states, then please feel free to pass this video along to them. And of course, subscribe to my channel if you're interested in learning more NLP and neurosemantics, coaching, and self-actualization techniques to unleash the highest and best of human potential, starting with yourself. Look forward to seeing your comments, and look forward to seeing you in a future video, in the comment section, or in a future course.